But what can you do in the effort to help prevent eating disorders? Understand and make an effort to recognize the media's portrayal of beauty. Remember, most fashion models are thinner than 98% of American women, and that most magazines use programs such as Photoshop to alter and distort the true appearance of an image, such as slimming down parts of the body, enhancing bust sizes, elongating necks, enlarging eyes, smoothing skin, and on and on. Fashion and beauty magazines create impossible body types that we look to model our own bodies after. If you are a parent, teacher, or athletic coach, try to emphasize factors that contribute to personal success, such as motivation and drive, rather than body weight and shape. Also, try to recognize when healthy training routines or eating behaviors become an obsession or a battle. Be a role model. Examine your own views on body image, food, and health. Don't participate in making negative statements about yourself or others' weight and size. Learn to appreciate your own body. Encourage balanced eating and help encourage positive self-esteem. When an individual has an eating disorder, the path toward recovery can be challenging and is often not a straight and narrow path. We're going to hear from a woman who began struggling with an eating disorder a number of years ago. Let's hear how her experiences affected her and how she found the road to recovery.
Hi, my name is Julie Squires, and I am 42 years old, and I have been in recovery from an eating disorder for about 4 years now. And my story starts pretty much from the beginning of, from as far back as my memory goes, actually. I don't really ever remember having a normal relationship with food. I always, as a kid even, was just a little more supercharged, I guess you could say, with the thought of food. And from an early age, I started sneaking food into my bedroom, and I guess we would call that kind of hoarding food, really. And just never saw it as completely normal. As a child, I was just growing normally, and I think at about age 12 or 13, as I was entering puberty, I started to get a little, what you would call, I guess, chunky. And I remember a specific incident where my mom said to me, you know, you better be careful, you better watch out. And that kind of sparked in me the concept that whatever I was not okay. And I then entered the eternal quest of dieting. And you know, they often say with eating disorders that eating disorders begin with dieting, and I do believe that that's true, not for everyone. In other words, it doesn't mean that everyone who ever diets will then end up with an eating disorder. However, it can be a precursor for a lot of people if the situation is right. And there's a little saying that say for eating disorders that genetics load the gun and the environment pulls the trigger, and that certainly is the case for me in my situation. So what I've since learned about my eating disorder is that food played a critical role for me, and what it played for me was nourishment in a different sort, but it wasn't the sort of nourishment that I really needed. What I really needed was the feeling of unconditional love. And it's not as if to say my parents didn't love me, like they loved me very much, but I never really felt that unconditional love. I always felt conditional love. In other words, if you get good grades, if you look a certain way, you act a certain way, then you'll be loved. But so I searched for that in other ways and tried to fill up that empty void with food. I started dieting around the age of 12 or 13 and soon learned that you could get positive accolades for losing weight. And I would go to the YMCA with my dad twice a week, and I would take aerobics classes and lose weight. And every week I'd get in the car and say, Dad, I lost another pound, or I lost 2 pounds this week. And he'd say, oh, great, great job. And that just sort of escalated, and it kind of got out of control for me. I just I loved the attention of, wow, I'm doing something. This must be, I must be finally doing the right thing here. Now I'm feeling accepted. However, that soon turned to, if a little is good, then more must be better. That was what I thought in my own mind. And that escalated into full-blown anorexia, which was approximately at the age of 15 or 16 years old. And I think sometimes people misunderstand anorexia, and they think that, anorexics don't want to eat. I wanted to eat desperately. I was hungry all the time. I can remember waking up in the middle of the night and my stomach growling. I remember not being able to sleep because I was so hungry. But what ends up happening is it starts actually as a fear of being fat. So therefore, a fear of being fat then ends up with a fear of food. And there are many, many, many situations I can't even remember in my life during that period of time because my brain was so starved. I ended up weighing less than 90 pounds during that time, and I withdrew from all of my friends and my family because friends and family always create situations where food might be involved, so I was trying to isolate myself and minimize all those type of interactions where I might be challenged to eat or people might make comments and or try to get me to eat, which was terrifying to me. And this, you have to realize, is back in the early to mid 80s. And eating disorders were not all that well known or well publicized in that time. What ended up happening for me is that my friends in high school actually contacted the school nurse, and I was called down, and they had an intervention. They brought my parents, at least brought my mom, excuse me, and said, my friend said, we're really concerned. I mean, Julie, isn't eating. When we go to lunch, she's making excuses, all of which were true. And therein started therapy for me in my life. And my parents, of course, were terrified. I think it was a case for them that they didn't really realize how bad it had gotten because they were living with me every single day. So my parents, I remember, were putting a lot of pressure on me to eat, and it became the big focus. And that's one thing that individuals with eating disorders hate, is how all of a sudden the whole entire family turns their attention onto that person, and it becomes an all-consuming thing. Like every hour of every day, every second of every hour is spent on, what's Julie eating? Is she eating? Is she not eating? So on and so forth. I started to kind of lose my resolve, and that was the other thing. It's like, to be anorexic, at least for me, it took an extreme amount of, I don't even know if willpower is the right term, but again, I was hungry. As also often happens with people with eating disorders kind of, they're not always clean and tidy and stay in a little box. They're messy, and they kind of can wax and wane from one type of an eating disorder into another, which is what happened with me. I went from that extreme restricting behavior of anorexia to actually a binging behavior, which is associated with binge eating disorder and or bulimia. And that's actually what happened to me. I can remember the day that I started to eat again, and eat with abandon. I guess I should say it was really the day that I started binging. And it was just on all the foods that I had restricted, all the high-fat foods, butter, that's specifically what I remember. And so at that point, I had lost all control, and I usually just say that my body won out, and that's what will happen. In the end, your body will always win out because your body has the wisdom